What's up, YouTube? I am back with more news, more information, more talk on astrology, of course. I wasn't going to come on here today, and I realized that I sort of challenged myself with my last video with just making more content, making a presence, making making myself known, coming on more. And it's not like I haven't wanted to come on, but life is crazy. Life is busy. Life is everywhere. I'm not in my car this time, so you get to see my room. I'm not going to share a lot of it, but at least you get to see a little. Um, I just wanted to come on today and just on the theme, I guess, of Mercury. I think in my last video, I made mention that Mercury is making me do it this year. And I really and truly believe that for myself. I just think I am going to keep an eye out for Mercury, as Mercury is doing all sorts of things in my life. But today, I wanted to share about another aspect that has been happening in astrology over the past week. And yeah, I've really been feeling this aspect in astrology. Um, well, let me just start by saying that if you watch this channel, I'm guessing you may have a little bit of knowledge about astrology. If you listen to anything I say, you're going to learn much, much more about astrology, as it is one of my, well, it probably is outside of my children, favorite topics and of discussion. So I plan on sharing a lot more of my mind and my soul on how I see astrology this year. I'm more of a, I know there's many different people who look into astrology out there, and they come from more of like a teaching or a sort of um how is all this affecting you vibe. And I know or even I think more stereotypical in how they view the signs and, so on and so forth. But I sort of look at astrology as more of a spiritual praxis. I think in the beginning, I've always had a love for astrology. I think ever since I was maybe a young girl. I'm not exactly sure the age, but I definitely, I don't know, I could sort of feel that people were more than just, the families they came from, the neighborhoods they lived in, um, what religion or schools they went to, or religious groups they were affiliated with, or which schools they went to. I don't know. I had I think sort of from a small child, just this sense that people carried their own energy, and that energy had to come from somewhere, right? And so for me, um, as I grew up and I got older, um, I just never knew astrology was really a thing until mid 40s, and then my whole life changed. And now I realize a lot of all of that sensing and that deep feeling I had about people and their lives, and sort of just the world, just the, you know, life as a whole, just having like more of an anthropological um, approach to life. It just, it really took shape for me. And seeing that, I'm not weird, or maybe I am to some still. I mean, I know I'm definitely weird to my family. My family of origin definitely think I'm weird. But, and probably, I don't know, my kids, my immediate family probably sees me in that way. My kids kind of wonder, I think sometimes. But I definitely love astrology, and I think it tells a lot of stories. Like I said, I think in my last video that I feel that it is more literal than we give it credit for. And I think that it plays out in our life more than we are willing to admit for some of us. I know I come from a very religious family and, religious background. I mean, I feel like if you're, I know, I mean, I'm in the USA, but most countries have some sort of, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. I think of other places, maybe Northern Europe, but anyhow, maybe there's not as much of a focus on choosing some religious teaching and holding to it and training and believing in it until the day you so disappear or die or go to heaven or whatever it may be. Um, I tend to lean more towards now using astrology fully as a spiritual practice for me. And I know that in the culture, in the country I live in, that's not necessarily the norm. I hope it becomes more of the norm. I think it's changing. I definitely think it's changing. I think I get a sense from just regular people, everyday people, or coworkers, or my kids' friends at school, or what have you, that it's definitely something that's intriguing. It's definitely something that people are more acceptive, um, yeah, acceptive of than they were 10, maybe 15 years ago. And they want to know more, and they want, especially if you come off as a weirdo like myself, like I said, they want to know, like, why do you think that way? Or spiritual practice and astrology, right? Like, that's interesting. Do you live your life this way, or do you align with some of the astrology um teachings and things of that nature? And the answer is to that is yes, I do. I do align with that. And I cannot stand the camera this way. I'm trying to get used to it because holding it this way is so different for me than, anyways, holding it vertical. But anyhow, I just wanted to pop on here, and I wanted to talk a little about just share more, I think, more from a literal life perspective on astrology and how it really, I think, works, like the literal side of it, how it works in our lives and how it plays out. I watch a lot of videos from people, and they talk a lot about how it could happen, or what could things look like, and this might happen as sort of a predictive tool. And I think I'm more of a realist in that I want to see the physical manifestation of things. Well, first of all, I want to explore and research, but at the same time, I want to witness sort of the physical manifestation of how things play out in my own life. And yeah, I guess you can kind of say, like, I love being sort of that guinea pig when it comes to astrology. I am more of a person where I ask a lot of questions. I want to get a lot of samples. I study things and I look at things. And um, even friends that have tons of astrology questions for me, generally they're met with a lot of questions from me, and how things are playing out in their life. And I will have them like, oh my God, you got to tell me, why is this happening? Or what's going to happen with this? And some of my coworkers are very much so into like uh, things I like to prepare for, like moon lunations. Like there's a new moon coming up in Capricorn, which I'm super excited about. on the 18th, and then there was a full moon in Cancer this month. So I really get excited about the moon lunations, and I have a few coworkers that share with me in that whole praxis, and I am trying to develop sort of like a moon group where we really talk about the moon and how it's impacting you, especially if you are a moon heavy person, or, you know, some people don't really understand just how much the moon affects them in their astrology charts, let alone have they really even understood their astrology charts. I find that a lot of people nowadays know a little bit about their astrology charts, but they just don't understand how things are affecting them. And my moon is a huge topic in my astrological chart, and it's, yeah, I definitely feel it, and I definitely can see things happening in my life from it, from a very literal standpoint. With almost every lunation, there's, or even, you know, as the moon changes signs so frequently, the moon changes signs every couple days. So even that is, you know, it affects you if you have a significant moon placement. But I'm not going to bore with that. I just wanted to, I wrote down a couple of things because I know I tend to get off on tangents. And I wanted to talk about the aspect I wanted to talk about today was this lunation of, or the planets, this transit, I should say, where we had the planet of Mars, okay, in Capricorn right now, where it's exalted, opposing the planet of Jupiter, which is in Cancer right now, and it's exalted, but it's going backwards. It's kind of retrograding. When a planet goes retrograde, it appears that to look as if it's going back, and you will notice it um, in astrological software that it will show a different color, and just you'll see the degree signs, you know, going backwards in degree, in number. And so I just wanted to talk about this because I think that well, first of all, this was a huge, and like I said, I love sharing literal from my life and sort of being that guinea pig, you know, when it comes to astrology, and um my knack for observation and for research. And sometimes I'm not always on it. And as of late, I haven't really been on it, you know, with my astrology practice. Usually I'm I love to journal about it and research about certain things and study from a course I'm taking, but lately I've just been, I would say probably for the last, I don't know, since the nodes switched over from Virgo to Pisces, or that Pisces Virgo axis, I've just really been kind of in a different place in my life, and I haven't really, it hasn't really pointed to astrology. Okay, that's scary. There's a cop circling my little community. Hopefully they live here. I don't know what's going on. Anyhow, I'm going to try not to get too distracted. I am looking out the window. But so Jupiter opposing Mars. Okay. So this is huge for me. This has been a lunation. I haven't really been on it, and I haven't really been studying it. I think we started feeling the energies of this lunation around Monday, I think, is when they were within like a significant close degree of coming together in a conjunction, or not a conjunction, in an opposition, where they would make a what is called in astrology an aspect to one another. And so you know, I was already going through some things, and I've been sort of going through my own Mars Jupiter stuff. I actually have this lunation, or this aspect in my natal chart. And you would think someone with that exact aspect would be paying attention to this and sort of researching and trying to prepare myself as best I could and looking at some of the things that would eventually come up, because that's what I one of the spiritual reasons of why I enjoy astrology and why I love to use it. But to be quick, so Jupiter, well, let's see, we'll take Mars first, okay? I just wanted to share a couple of things about Mars, okay? Just three maybe. Mars, I like to do a pros and I like to do a cons, because I think in life, and as in just everything, there's a pros and there's a cons. I don't really necessarily think there's a pros, everything has a cons, like there's bad and everything. I feel like you can find good in almost anything. There's something good, even if it's something small, and I mean, I'm ruled by Jupiter, so that could just be my way of looking at life. But there you have it. So Mars, one of the pros I wrote down was it's an energy source. It's good with energy and giving us strength and the ability to take on extreme activities such as sports and exercise and things like that. And I really appreciate Mars for that. It's also, it gives us that courage. I think like as a warrior, to warrior on for something or stand up for a cause that we believe in, whether that be, I noticed this past weekend, there were significant protests going on in the USA, um, just across, the nation with just this ice thing and people being arrested and like I think one woman was killed or something. But people have protests. I think I saw in the media like there were hundreds of protests going on or something crazy like that. I don't remember the exact number, but um and these were people that just I just think of the courage it takes to stand up and to stand out in front of the world and just not care for how people might see you or what this could do to you, and just let the world know that you are not proud of what's going on, you do not agree with what's going on, what have you. I just thought that was so Marsian, to protest, to do something like to protest, I think is a very Marsian um, sort of way to act or to be. Um, so war, all right, another, or now let's look at some of the I guess you could call them cons or bad things about Mars. Mars is what is considered in astrology a malefic planet. So, it's malefic. And when you think of that word, I think it gives it away, right? It's not good. It doesn't have, or, it delivers the things that might not be great in life. Cutting ties or severing or some of the things Mars have been used to, or definitions that have been used to explain Mars or share what Mars is like. Taking something away, fights and things like that, wars is a huge example of that. Um, and that is extreme, Mars could indicate death. Mars is very, it's truly, it's that energy that most of us want to avoid. Um, I think sometimes, well, it just depends on how Mars plays out in your natal chart, but yeah, like I think if you are a natural Marsian person, you probably want to take the reins, right? You don't back down, put it that way. You're probably a great athlete or a soldier, whatever it may be. And so Mars is significant. If you're ruled by Mars, Mars rules the sign of Aries. It is the masculine energy of Mars, and it also rules the sign of Scorpio, the more feminine, or the feminine um, energy or element of Mars. And it's definitely been a week for me with this opposition. And like I said, a lot of times, it's easy sometimes to see how an aspect or a transit is happening from my vision boards are in the back, but how an aspect is happening on a global level or a nation, like where you live or maybe what country you're from, what's going on in that country, what have you. But then you know, also these things are playing out in our lives, right? And for me, I just, like I said, I sometimes I'm up to date and I'm paying attention to these aspects, you know, before they culminate, meaning when they actually come within a degree, or, they come in full aspect, meaning they are at the same degree of one another and they are making an aspect in astrology. And I know for me, Monday was sort of like last Monday, the starting of last week was sort of like when they, started getting in that range of where you probably could start feeling this opposition. And, you know, just opposition, by definition, you think of an opposition, it's not even a great word, there's an opponent, right? There's a winner and there's a loser. And and in this case, um you look to the planets and you can say, well, which one you think is going to win? Is it going to be Mars? Is it going to be Jupiter? And it really depends on your chart. It really depends on what's going on in your own personal chart. And I can tell you for a fact, for me right now, Mars was the winner. I proclaim Mars the winner of this transit for me. And I think sometimes, literally, astrology gives you a way of looking at things in a better light, to where you're not so hard on yourself. You look at, gosh, I lost that battle, or I didn't see that one coming, or, what have you. Something happened and you're like, well, of course, Mars is opposing Jupiter right now. And, it just gives you a way of looking at life to where you're not so sad or depressed, or you may still have those emotions and those feelings, because life is very literal and very real. I may get a knock on my door, despite the fact that I said don't knock on the door. We'll see. But yeah, I'm wrapping up anyway, but I just wanted to share some of the pros from Jupiter. Jupiter has been known to be called, the god of abundance and the good things, prosperity, help through understanding. Jupiter is, you know, the good planet. Mars is the bad one. Jupiter is the good one. It's the good guy. And or can be, because I did find, I feel like, some cons to Jupiter. It can be overindulgent, too much of a good thing, it's never good. Laziness, over promising, maybe looking at the glass too half full when it's really, you know, probably not that much in it. But yeah, so I just wanted to share that. I think that is so important for us to take these transits and look at them in our own life and how they're playing out and make sense of them, to not lose hope in our life, or not back down to the pressure. There were multiple things going on in my life this past week where I just, like I said, Mars was just overpowering, just working too much would be one. And, I have a kid that plays sports, and just, just the warring nature of that, and just, and he also has a significant aspect in his chart to Mars. And so, but I could, at the end of the week, I could always come and I could look at the good of where Jupiter was there and helping. Although I feel right now Jupiter is retrograde, and, even though it's exalted, it's kind of going back in time. It's going back over another part of where we were. And, Mars is just charging on right now. And so, um, it culminated this weekend. And I'll share this quick story with you that I thought was just so literal. And then this will be the wrap up of the video. Sorry, it's been much longer than I expected. But I had a situation where, and this has been very recent, where I sometimes will give like plasma in my local community area. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a way to help people who are really sick, and, they take plasma from your blood, and it helps to come up with things like cures for things that people have, like autoimmune diseases and things of that nature. A very Jupiterian thing, you get a little money for it, but I feel like it's not nowhere compared to, it definitely, I'll put it to you this way, it definitely takes a lot of courage for me to do that, because I don't like needles. And the whole point of this is they take blood, they hook you up to this machine, and the machine is designed to take the blood from your body and separate. It's so cool. They, like, I don't even know how they do this, but the blood comes out, and they take plasma from your blood, and then they put the blood back. And so it's just that, I think it's such a cool way to give back and to, earn a little bit if you care about that, or if some people don't really care about that aspect to it. You don't earn a lot, so I think that's why. But, you definitely, it's a way to give back. It's very, I feel like, altruistic in a way. And you don't realize how many, they let you know, like, how many people you've helped after your visit. And it's just, it's so cool. Well, anyways, very Mars Jupiter, okay, literal happening in my life, happening to me. By the way, I am ruled by Jupiter. So I go out, and I was like, I'm gonna do that this weekend. And when Mars and Jupiter are making this aspect and culminating, I hadn't really thought about it. I was like, yeah, what could happen, right? Or I just really hadn't thought about it. And so I went out, and they tried both arms. The first arm, the lady began to put the needle in. And, I noticed a little pain with her putting the needle in, but I was like, it's a needle. It's supposed to hurt, right? It's not going to feel good. And, the nurse was like, does it feel all right? Does everything feel okay? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess it feels like, I guess a needle went into my arm, and, so of course, the blood starts going through the machine, and then all of a sudden the machine just starts going crazy. It just starts making this loud noise. And I noticed, like, right when the machine started doing this, my arm, like where the needle was inserted, started to get very like it was just like this pressure, like it was pain, but it was more like a painful pressure, like, I don't know if it was like something was going to explode, but it was starting to get painful. So another nurse comes over, and she starts talking to the other lady that was helping me, or the lady that put the needle in. And, she called whatever had happened something, and she was like, oh, you're going to learn today. You're going to have to do something else, which I had no clue of what she meant when she said that. And so, I asked, like, is everything okay? I was like, are you guys gonna have to use the other arm? And she was like, yeah. And so, she was like, but for this arm, does everything feel okay? Does it hurt? And at that time, you know, it was so recent, like I didn't start to feel the pain right away. So she bandaged that one up, moved to the other arm, put a cold pack on one arm. And so same thing happened on the other arm. And, maybe this time on the first arm where I got like maybe, I don't know, 3, 4 minutes in. On the second arm, I maybe got like 10 minutes in. And I looked down at my arm and I just saw like this puddle of blood on my arm. And I was like, uh-oh. And the machine starts going off again. And of course the nurses run over, and she was like, yeah, it's not going to work today, you know. And I was just, in my mind, I thought about Mars opposing Jupiter. And, you know, I hadn't been there in a while, and I don't know, like, they were trying to explain to me, why it was happening or whatever, or something with the vein or my veins or something like that. But it was just in that moment, though, for me, literally what I could see is I've never had that problem before, and I've gone several times in the past. And I was like, okay. And she was like, don't worry, you'll still get paid for coming in and trying to help out. And we thank you for coming in and trying to help out. But, it's just, yeah, it's sort of fighting against you. The machine was fighting against the blood going out of my body and separating the plasma. And, so I lost blood in the battle, I guess you could call it at this point. But it's, again, astrology is super literal. And I think that when I think of my natal chart, which I'm very closely connected with and intertwined, and I know what's coming and what's happening in my own energy, I just sat there, I had to sit there for a minute anyway. Like I got like what is it? Their little hospital treatment, I guess. I had to drink a Gatorade and rest and all the things I don't want to do, Mars. And but I had to, I had to take a moment, and I had to sit there, and I had to be willing to just be given to and rest. And yeah, and I could go home. But it was definitely a very literal thing that happened, with a whole bunch of other things that were happening throughout the week with this opposition. And like I said, I have this opposition, this aspect in my very own natal chart. When I was born, Mars was opposing Jupiter, and Jupiter was retrograde. So it was just too freakishly crazy for me to literally connect the two. But it was very, yeah, it's why I love astrology. It's why I do what I do. It's why I'm building my astrology courses to teach others. And if anything, I think it just gives us a sense of understanding and a way of looking at our lives where, you know, everything is just not black and white. It just isn't. We don't just go to work and exist or try to become famous and rich and get married and have kids. And there's a whole lot of life happening, within us, outside of us, around us, in the universe. And if we aren't tapped in, we can just think that life is just this thing that somehow we're here to do. We live and we breathe and we eat and poop and sleep, and then we die and, work, or I guess, whatever you call it. But, there's so much more to life. There's so much more to our experience, I think, as humans, that I know for myself, I've had the honor and the pleasure of just really diving deeper in over the past, let's see, how long have I been studying astrology? 5 years, 6 years almost. So yeah, it's, now it's more, I'm at a level where I just want to share those experiences with others and encourage others with what I know. So this video has been well over the time I wanted to be on here, but I definitely wanted to hop on here and share my Mars opposite Jupiter experience this past week. And um yeah, comment if you have an experience where you just felt the tug of Mars, which, we highlighted Mars and, just opposing Jupiter, opposing the good. What are some things that's happening? And if you feel called to share, please share. If not, I want to try to upload a video every Sunday, so hopefully you will tune in for the next one. And with that, I will see you around the internet. Love and peace.